but I mean, you could do demos on your own YouTube channel, etc. If you had to self-analyze why out of those five, this one's, let's say, performing the best, why is it this one?
As a company, we did a virtual event back in May, and out of the 5,000 registrants that we had for the webinar, our program alone was responsible for 2,000 of those registrants. What if you don't include it? What if you include a video? I think I would rather roll the dice on drive-in registration versus trying to figure out or make an assumption about an algorithm that we have no control over.
In 2025, today, where do you see the largest gaps in terms of what's working and what's at the cutting edge, but most companies have not yet caught up to? All right, before we dive in, you're listening to the Executive Brand Podcast with me, your host, Thormeier. Each week, I sit down with top B2B CEOs, executive, and founders to break down their playbooks. If you've not yet, it would really help if you subscribe or follow the show because it helps us get on better guests and create better content for you guys. All right, let's dive in. All right, I'm here with Justin Levy. He's the Director of Social Media and Influencer Marketing at ZoomInfo. ZoomInfo is a go-to-market intelligence platform. Most people know them for their contact database. They're doing about 1.2 billion in ARR, about 4,000 employees. Justin is also the advisor at Limelight. Previously, he was Senior Director of Influencer Marketing and Head of Community at Demandbase, Director of Social Marketing at ServiceNow, and Director of Global Social Media at Citrix. So that's actually almost 15 years of social for B2B tech, which is very impressive. The reason why I wanted to have you on, Justin, is because, among other things, you launched ZoomInfo's first executive social program and scaled employee advocacy from 100 to 1,800 employees, which drove 58,000 engagements and 36 million in reach. And you also built and scaled the company's first influencer marketing program to 40 plus creators now across LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, Substack, newsletters, and podcasts, which you guys can track into revenue. And it generated over couple millions in revenue. So I want to break down all of those and a bunch of those on this podcast. And Justin, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Anything to amend or correct there in the intro?
No, I think that's all perfect.
Awesome. Now, as I mentioned there, you've run social media for B2B tech companies for over 10 years. You joined Citrix in 2011 in a social media role. In 2025, obviously, social media has changed a lot, and what works, what doesn't work. Today, where do you see the largest gaps in terms of what's working and what's at the cutting edge, but most companies have not yet caught up to?
Yeah, I think that, the hardest part right now for a lot of companies, especially if you're in B2B, your focus tends to be on LinkedIn, right? One of the hard things there right now is naturally you see the conversation all the time around the algorithm, and LinkedIn's consistently tweaking and changing the algorithm. Almost no one understands what those changes are or has knowledge into them. But some deep research has been done recently into the new changes, the underlying platform structure, and move that they've made from being focused more on community engagement to more contextual topics, right? So instead of the kind of golden hour rule that existed previously of how much engagement could you get from your community and your first level connections and whatnot, it's now pivoted more based on all the studies and the research that has been done to be more contextual. So if you take me, for example, the more that I write on influencer marketing and comment and are part of that community, the more likely my content on influencer marketing is likely to show. If you're a startup, the more you write about startups and the tech or things of that nature, the more likely that content is going to be prioritized. However, so that's one thing, right? That's a gap that exists.
So it's more of an interest-based rather than follower-based algorithm, similar to how TikTok works or Instagram.
Exactly. And so I think that that's one piece. And, there's always been this push, maybe the past year or so, 2 years, by LinkedIn to post more vertical video.
Mm-hmm.
But there's diminishing when you talk to a lot of creators and a lot of brands, there's a diminishing return on the engagement on that. So you're seeing this, you should being told essentially you should do more of this, but when people do more of that, they're seeing diminishing returns.
Right.
So there's that gap that is not anyone's fault per se. It just exists right now. I think another gap that I'm seeing a lot of companies, especially B2B companies, not take advantage of right now is if you stay on that kind of vertical video track, is using YouTube Shorts and therefore kind of TikTok. It's known that YouTube has obviously an impact on search, but AI overviews are increasingly a big topic in
Mm-hmm.
zero click searches. So areas like YouTube Shorts and broader YouTube videos, but also Reddit and some of these other platforms, those are probably among the biggest gaps that I'm seeing. Some brands
So
can go
sorry
back
to
to
interrupt.
that.
You're saying YouTube Shorts are driving AEO, GEO, however you might want to call it. I've definitely seen Reddit there that people talk
Yep.
about how you talked about on Reddit. I've not heard people say that YouTube Shorts actually have an impact there.
It's a test that we're running right now at ZoomInfo, right? So we're posting around 3 YouTube Shorts a day
Hmm.
to see if the contextual kind of feedback on it will show up in AI overviews and AI platforms and things, the different LLMs. So
Yeah.
it's a hypothesis or a test that we're running. We'll see how that plays out. We are fortunate enough here to have a kind of queue of video to tap and use from podcasts and work with creators and things of
Yep.
that nature. So, but like you said, definitively Reddit is a platform that's shown up for all of those terms, AIO and AEO and whatnot. And a lot of companies, unless you're really big companies, aren't taking advantage of it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think. Like you see, like Fortune 100 companies will have a big community there, things of that nature. You see some B2C companies like Sonos has a really big presence there and a really successful case study level presence.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other nuances that you're not seeing a lot of B2B brands taking advantage of, whether that's on the community building side or it's on the being an integrated member of the various subreddits, right? Not trying to sell your wares,
Yeah.
but just being a member of these subreddits that are
Right.
impactful to your brand.
Interesting. Now, the first thing you mentioned when I asked about the gap, you said that with LinkedIn, the algorithm is changing and no one can really understand why or how, which is impacting reach of people. And then they're pushing vertical video from LinkedIn, the company is pushing vertical video, but it's not really showing up for people as in terms of performing better. Is the takeaway of that for you that most B2B companies are overextending on LinkedIn and should diversify into other places?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think that you still need to have your presence, right? Because a lot of your buyers and your persona and whatnot are going to be on LinkedIn. That's where your employees and your executives tend to live in their communities. But no matter the impact that YouTube Shorts or the platform itself may have, it's still an important platform to
Mm-hmm.
be present on. You have TikTok, which increasingly has B2B creators and B2B brands having a greater presence on there, right? You see some of the companies like HubSpot and ClickUp and whatnot building strong presences there as B2B brands. And you have larger and larger creators that have built presences there that work with B2B brands. We certainly have them
Yep.
on our bench. So I think the diversification is important. I do think we've seen a shift, which was not previously the case, off of Twitter and off of
Mm-hmm.
Facebook. That was, if you asked me 5, 7+ years ago, Twitter was 100% where brands were, right? That's where you built your strategy. That's where you found your influencers. That is where, when I was on the consultant side, we worked with brands on Facebook. Back, we're in 2025 now, so 16 years ago or so, I wrote a book on Facebook marketing for businesses. So that is that has evolved,
Yeah.
and now the platforms have changed naturally.
Yeah. But would you still say with the fact that companies are overextended and should diversify into podcasts, newsletters, Reddit, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, LinkedIn is still number one for B2B?
I firmly agree, especially on purely a social network basis,
Yeah.
right? If you're looking at the major social channels, I definitely think that is the go-to place. It is the place where uh, other like brands live, competitors and whatnot. It is where your community, your prospects, customers, fans live. It's where your executives and employees spend a lot of their time. It's just, you shouldn't put all your eggs into
Yeah,
that basket,
that makes
right?
sense.
So, and especially if you're already creating similar content, it's not hard to take that content, repurpose it. Don't copy it one for one, but repurpose it for the other channels in the tone and the voice and the structure that those channels kind of dictate.
If LinkedIn is channel number one for ZoomInfo for the social side of things, which ones would you say are number two and number three?
I think because of our test these days with YouTube, specifically Shorts, that's consuming a lot of time to keep up the rigor that we've set there. Um, Certainly, Reddit is something we continue to explore and look into and try to look at on the community side. How can we repurpose content that we're already creating? Such as, can we take a blog post or a question that we're seeing show up through search, through organic search, and go answer that question within our community? And then on our paid side, our paid media teams is spending a good portion of their time within Reddit, experimenting with the different kind of paid products that Reddit offers.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, LinkedIn 1, YouTube 2, Reddit 3?
Yeah, that's pretty safe. I would say safe to say.
Now, when I look at your, I did my research on your LinkedIn and kind of what you've done. I'd bucket your activities into 5 broad buckets, and I'm curious to see if you would agree. There's one, the company social, which is kind of the ZoomInfo page, the newsletter that you guys have. There's the executive social, Henry, other executives posting on LinkedIn, for example, employee advocacy, which you could say is similar. It's internal people. There's external influencers, right? The 40 influencers that you work with across different channels. And then there's the customer and prospect community that you guys are running. Is that fair to say there's those 5 rough buckets?
Yeah, I would say that that's a fair classification.
No, I'm curious, and it's always not a fair question to ask for your favorite child, but out of those 5 buckets, if you had to pick one, you could only do one, activate one, run one, focus on one. Out of those 5, which one would it be?
I think our creator program is among the most successful for us. It is the one that we have scaled all of our programs over the past 2 years that I've been here, from social to exec advocacies, employee advocacy, so on and so forth. But our creator program allows you to tap into their communities. Certainly, some of those you can't access just naturally, right? You don't have those folks as your followers or your subscribers. It also allows you to gain a presence through them and through that partnership and relationship on other platforms, right? So Substack, and that will have an impact in search and with their communities. YouTube, where you can have demo videos, and those creators with those platforms there being able to break down product or break down their view on how your product integrates, maybe in part of a larger tech stack or to help with a problem, right? So being able to use those external voices on the platforms where they have influence, I think is probably, if I did have to pick my favorite kind of child out of the bunch, it would probably be our creator program.
And if you had to I mean, you just listed a couple things, but I mean, you could do demos on your own YouTube channel, etc. If you had to self-analyze why out of those five, this one's, let's say, performing the best,
Yeah.
why is it this one?
I think it's because it allows us, like I said, to reach folks that we can't reach otherwise, right? So yes, we could, for example, post a demo video on our YouTube page. We could take that and repost it or repurpose it on our blog or our LinkedIn newsletter. But that does not mean, that might help us show up in search and all that other goodness, but that doesn't mean that the 100,000 followers that this one creator has
Sure.
will ever see that. This does not mean that that Substack that has 50,000 subscribers will ever see that video from us. And also, naturally, if we do a demo, it's promotional. It is very clearly promotional. It is ZoomInfo saying why this new ZoomInfo product is the greatest thing, and why you should come check it out on our website and like go into our lead flow and things of that nature. Coming from a creator, it's going to be more natural. It's not going to be just a straight demo. It will be maybe a demo of a feature showcasing how they integrate or how they work with their clients, but it is going to be their natural voice to appeal to their community.
Is influencer marketing earned media or paid media?
I think it's earned media. On the paid side of it, the one facet of it that I say is paid, as a caveat, is that now with these platforms, with a lot of them, you have the capability to put paid spend behind their posts, right? So if you're one of our creators and you publish a post on LinkedIn, for example, LinkedIn now provides you the capability to, allows the brand the capability to put paid spend behind your post on your profile. Depending on how you want to consider that, could that be considered paid media? Of course it could. Also, if the brand retains the native content that's created, the video content or what have you, and puts that into paid media streams, sure, that is obviously going to naturally be paid media. But the day-to-day kind of mechanism of the creator program is certainly earned. It's not paid media. At least that's not how I bucket it, and how I think that the industry honestly buckets it.
I mean, I'm thinking on the spot here, but where my head goes, it kind of depends on the type of creator partnership you do. If you're sponsoring someone's newsletter, and because of that, they place your logo at the top of the newsletter, you're obviously paying that creator to place your logo at the top of their newsletter. That feels more like paid, because what you would have done in the past, maybe if you would have run it through Google Ads, it would have picked a blog website and then placed your logo on that blog through Google Ads. That feels more like paid, while earned might be more if I'm partnering with a creator and they're actually a fan of the product, and we're creating some sort of thing where they get to talk about our product in a way that comes naturally to them, how they use it, why they love it. Obviously, I'm still paying that creator to create that post. I, as a brand, didn't earn that audience. The creator earned that audience, and now they're deciding to partner with a brand. But it feels more organic, where it's not as obvious like, hey, a brand just paid me to place a logo here.
Sure.
So it's interesting. And do you feel like, I saw a post that you did where you actually specifically talked about there's two types of kind of placements. There's the logo on top on a newsletter, and then there's the incorporated thing. And your takeaway, I think, was actually you should do both. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I think that across the board, right? If you look at all the different types of content and platforms and whatnot, you see a lot of brands and or creators, because sometimes it's on what the creator offers, right? Some might not offer, specific to your example, the ability for a fully written article on a brand. They may just say, no, this, the only thing I sell or I have as a product is that logo, or a podcast ad, not something where we're interviewing someone on your team, and or one of your customers. But I think that you have to look at everything as being layered, right? If you put everything into LinkedIn post, or everything into, I'm only going to do podcast ads and newsletter ads or something like that, you miss the ability to touch and kind of go out to those other subscriber bases. You miss the opportunity to work with different creators or go deeper with different creators, right? Some may have LinkedIn, TikTok, and Substack. Some may have a podcast, Substack, and LinkedIn, right? So if all you do is focus on, I just want to sponsor a bunch of newsletters, you're missing out on something that's broader and can
Right.
be more of a partnership.
Yep. Now, you mentioned that the creator program is driving millions of revenue. How are you guys measuring that? What is that number based on? How are you attributing things?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. We built a very strong partnership with our demand team. And so through the kind of what those teams naturally would do, right? Salesforce campaign IDs, UTMs per creator, kind of that whole process, we follow that process as well.
Mhm.
So if you take ebook, or right now we're doing something around this AI readiness kind of exam that you can take on the website, that is associated with a Salesforce campaign ID. Each one of our 40 creators has a UTM that tracks right back to them. And then they'll go into, anyone that fills it out will go into the lead flow, like anyone else that may come onto the website or may be marketed to through email marketing or webinars or what have you. So we're able to track all of that back. And, for example, as a company, we did a virtual event back in May. And out of the 5,000 registrants that we had for the webinar, our program alone was responsible for 2,000 of those registrants. And so naturally, just like those other 3,000 registrants that we knew where they came from and what channel and what program, we are able to track what happened with those 2,000 registrants that came from the creator program.
Couple follow-up question. Does that mean that every sponsored creator partnership post you do has a link in
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We don't do anything without some type of UTM, because not only is it important for the brand, right? You want to justify your spend and your ROI on it, but the creators also want to know that they're driving impact, right? You can take the money and run, but most creators want to ensure that they're building a long-term partnership with the brand. The only way they're going to do that is through knowing that they're having an impact on both awareness and demand metrics.
And you're, for example, not worrying. I personally don't believe that, but some people worry about that, for example, on LinkedIn, adding a link to the post will hurt its reach.
That's, I think that comes back to the kind of trying to figure out the algorithm. It's, do you add it? Does LinkedIn penalize you if you add it in the post itself? Yes, no, maybe so. Do they penalize you if you add it in the first comment? Yes, no, maybe so. Like, what if you don't include it? What if you include a video? I think that's one of those things that I would rather roll the dice on drive-in registration also, or drive-in downloads, or whatever the case is. Yeah. Also, we've seen success with it, working with the creators, versus trying to figure out or make an assumption about an algorithm that we have no control over.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the millions of revenue is based on influence revenue. So let's say a company, an account closes and, buys ZoomInfo. You can later go back and say, okay, they, clicked on a link from one of our creators, or they signed up to that webinar through one of our creator sponsored posts. So this drove influence. We had a touch point, and that's what this number is based on.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, so you don't just count, I don't know, net new contacts who were created, who weren't in the CRM before, and only entered the CRM because of the first touch being like a creator post or a newsletter or something like that.
Yeah, we actually do. It's all according to the kind of the lead scoring model that our team has set up. Not my team, but our broader team. Sometimes, if you take 2 leads, just for a kind of easy example, that come from the creator program, one may not have tripped the lead scoring model yet, right? Because they haven't had certain touches with our company, all the kind of goodness that the team can track there.
Yeah.
Now that registration comes in from that kind of set creator post, and that trips the model now, and then sends that to our sales team. Sometimes the way that the leads are prioritized, based on channel or touch point, is it a registration from that event that I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They may be treated differently and get routed. So we have some leads that, if we process 1,000 leads from the creator program, maybe half, as a made up example, maybe half route immediately, depend on their MQL and some of those metrics, maybe half head into the lead scoring model and may not trip for another, 30 days or whatever that kind of that model looks like.
Yeah. Now, given that this is your most successful program, and if you were talking to marketing or brand leader and they're not running an influencer marketing program, a creator program, how would you advise them to start this? Like, what are the steps? Do we run an experiment, prove ROI in some case? Do we need to commit to this for just 12 months and trust the process? What are the steps? And maybe, I don't know if this changes things greatly, but if we maybe take a slightly smaller company that doesn't quite have the resources that ZoomInfo has, maybe they're doing 10 million, 50 million, 100 million in revenue. How would you advise them to approach this?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. There are 2 paths that I think you can go. One, if you're going to go the paid path or invest, take a smaller number of creators, right? And understand, set a budget, doesn't have to be that much, and understand the folks that you can potentially work with for that budget. It might be 5 people at $1,000 per person, and that can be for 2 months or 3 months, right? Like, you kind of have to figure out the equalizer on that, kind of EQ that, but realize that you are not going to work with the most influential people in your space, right? Because those people are charging a lot. Their market rate dictates a deep investment in them. But I would always test with 3 months. And that's exactly what I do. That's what we've done, what I've done previously, because a 1-month test does not give you enough to prove out a campaign, right? A 6 to 12-month test is not a test anymore, right? Like that is, you are committing to a budget for a long period of time for something that you do not know if it's going to succeed. So put aside some money, essentially, for a lot of brands, right? They're okay if they lose a little bit of money on a test. Put that aside, leave that as a question, and try to prove that out with smaller creators. The other side, and where I've been successful at other companies where I haven't had a budget or I've had a smaller budget, is to work on organic campaigns where and we've all seen these. You see these all the time. You may be included in one, are top lists. And that gives you a capability to get on their radars. So you may run a top list of the 50 most impactful podcasts for startups, right? And you conduct your research, and this isn't just like go on LinkedIn and pick the first 50 you see, but you conduct your research, you gather information. You may ask your community, whether kind of internally or externally, who they go to, what's their go-to podcast. And now, like, let's just say, for example, your name comes up 10 times. Everyone's like, Finn is who I go to. I have to listen to Finn every week. Okay, that you become one of those 50, right?
Right.
Now, you may not know said brand. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But that brand reaches out, or that lead reaches out to you and can say, Finn, we're really impressed with what you're doing. We are happy to name you to our top 50 most impactful podcast for startups. Here's a social card. Here's 2 or 3 sample LinkedIn posts for you. Feel free to make it your own, but here's some samples. And congratulations, we're posting this. This goes live on November 11th or something like that. And then have a blog post that celebrates everyone, right? So you shared out, right? Hey, I'm so happy to be included in one of the top 50 startups by said brand, right? Go check out the full list. Now that points everyone back to
That's super smart.
brand website, right? That's low. The only cost in that is the resource, is the human resource to do the research, to do the outreach, to do the creative cards, the tracking, so that's resource intensive, but that doesn't cost you a dime to do. But now you're on their radar, or they're on your radar. So maybe for a podcast episode, you reach out and you're, hey, I want to have your CEO on because I really like their perspective on this.
Yeah.
Right? It's built a relationship out of that, or out of it happening 2 or 3 times.
That's smart. For the paid approach, you said do it for at least 3 months, or do it for 3 months. Do the test for 3 months. You said pick 5 creators.
Yeah.
Would you say,
depending on what your budget is, right? I mean, you might only be able to choose 3. You might be able to extend it to 10.
But would you because let's say, because we pay per placement, right? Per post, per newsletter, etc. Would you rather have 5 creators who mention us once a month for 3 months, so each one of the 5 does 3 posts? Or would you rather have 15 different ones who each do 1, so we still end up with 15? Or do we have rather 3 that each do 5? Like, what's the right balance?
I think you want to go as wide as you can with the budget that you have, right? If you can go across multiple platforms, that's amazing. If not, you want to have a calendar, because you should track all of this. You want to have a calendar that's as packed as possible, right? Because you want your name everywhere as
for
often
those 3
as
months.
possible. So let's say over those 3 months, you're running this test, you have this ebook, or whatever that asset is that you want to try generating demand for this event, virtual event or something like that. And you have 4 months lead time, right? So this 3 months, you're going to try this program out for ahead of time. Well, would you rather have one creator post 3 times a month to their audience of 5,000 people? Or would you rather 10 creators post once a month, so you're hitting 10 audiences? If each has 5,000 people, there'll be overlap, but for argument's sake, you have now hit 50,000 people, right? So you want to get as much kind of out and across the board as possible. Now, when you look at, and again, this is a test. So, and we do this naturally as a business, and we have 40 people, right? And those go up and go down. You measure everyone, and then you may decide after that test, yes, I want to continue to fund this, but this these two people drove 80% of the leads than these other 8 or 10 or whatever that number is. So I want to go deeper with them. Do they want to share more on LinkedIn, or do they have another product? Like, do they also have a Substack or a podcast or what have you? How can we go deeper with these two? And now maybe you're going to put more budget behind some other folks, right? I mean, then it becomes a budget game. But certainly I would go wide as possible with what budget you have.
And do you always recommend like driving towards like an ebook or a webinar or something like that, rather than just, hey, we're right to just the company? Like there should always be basically a lead magnet attached to the influencer campaign?
I find that those are the most impactful because you can track, generally speaking, if you're driving to that, there is campaign IDs already set up, right? Because if there is a lead magnet, more than one team is probably driving to that, right? It might be the demand team, the email marketing team, the content team, social may be doing something. And so it's an easy slot in for an influencer campaign, right? And it's going to give you a measurement field. Like I said, with that virtual event, we are able to see very quickly our investment was having a return based on all of the other investment in all of the other channels and what our slice of that pie was across the board.
So take me a little bit deeper into how do I evaluate whether it was a success? Because obviously in 3 months, none of those people or leads will end up buying an enterprise contract. So do you set a target for, we want this many webinar signups, and if we don't reach that number, it's not a success? And if so, how do you pick that number? Because if you've never done any influencer marketing, what do you know what a baseline should be?
Yeah. I tend to look at, so you'd actually be surprised. I don't know if every brand does this, but we do have a metric that measures how many, or the ACV of deals that are closed within 30 days. So that's an important number for us. Maybe other companies do that, maybe not. I'm not sure, but we do measure it. But I always look for a multiple on that return, because then I can truly prove it, right? Every company maybe is going to be different, but I don't want to ever see a 1-to-1, because that's not successful. Okay, I paid you $10,000, you generated 10,000 pipeline. Like that, we could get a multiple from somewhere else. So generally, I like to see a 3x. You could argue, and I see the arguments on both, whether that's pipeline or that's closed won / ACV, depending on how your company measures that. On pipeline, marketing can only help get the pipeline. We can't close that sale, right? We can help generate a good quality lead. We can help sales get to the point that they have to close that deal, help it to be as good of a lead as it possibly can. But at the end of the day, to get the closed sale, sales is the one calling on them, is trying to set up the POC and the working with them and their broader teams and what have you. So I tend to measure both. I'm not as mad at if I don't hit a 3x on the closed won ACV, right? Like I want to see it, and I'm really happy that I do most of the time. But that's a deeper conversation with sales. The pipeline, we are in a way in direct control of that, right? We generate the leads, the team makes those initial calls, can figure out they're an enterprise company, and we're going to talk to them about this pack, the kind of sales process takes over at that point.
Yeah.
Another metric that isn't a multiple per se, that I measure, that I would recommend companies that have the ability to measure it, is what segment are you in, right? So for example, we want to be an up market. We go up market. That's all well and good if all we delivered, and it's not saying it's not important because it makes you money, but if all we delivered through the the influencer program were SMB leads,
Mm-hmm.
that's not helping us go up market. Still delivering revenue, but it's not helping us go up market. So I also measure that, and I have goals against what's the percentage of up market pipeline we generate.
But I know we're nitty gritty here, but I'm just curious. Obviously, when you're in the enterprise software space, so there's no account that will only, sign up to that one webinar that was pushed through the creators, and that's the one touch point that they have, and then they, then they're in pipeline or close as a customer, right? They have a ton of other touch points. So is it based on like, hey, we're one of the touch points and therefore we influence this amount of pipeline? Or do you get, say, a share of the pipeline where this account is in pipeline, it's worth this much in pipeline, we influence it with our creator program because they sign up to the webinar, they clicked on this newsletter placement, let's say, and so therefore we get a 10% chunk of that pipeline kind of attributed to us?
We do, and not every company is going to be structured the same, right? We do one to one. So if for example, if this one creator drove one registrant for this virtual event, their whatever's associated with them is tracked separately. Then if there was email marketing, sent one email and they got one registrant, that's tracked to them. Mm-hmm. So we're not doing a shared, to your point, 10% or something like that. The other thing that someone can try, I've done this, previous brands, is you could set up a lead magnet that only is for the creator program, right? And you could do that. So for example, if you use the the top list idea that I talked about, what we did when I was at Demand Base was we worked on this top 100 women's list, or 100 powerful women in sales, and we did it with the women in sales team. What we would take is, so we'd do that list, 100 women, we'd publish it, we'd go back to them a week, 2 weeks later, ask for their perspective on one question that we had for them, get a certain number would reply, and we'd build an ebook off of that. Let's say you went through that process. Again, doesn't cost the brand anything, but let's say you go through that process. You could have that lead magnet. Well, you can offer it ungated if you wanted to, or you could gate it and offer that only through the creator program and say, there's no other channels that are reaching out, are sharing this. Right. Then you have a one-to-one, as far as who came through that form, and then out of that form, who converted. Like if you wanted to truly isolate that form, you could do that.
How would you suggest people pick the creators? Because obviously there's just the audience size that everyone can look at. This person has 10,000 followers. This person has 50,000 followers. But how would you suggest people, what are the criteria by which companies should pick who to work with?
Yeah, I think that certainly reach, size of platform is important. Persona and topical area is important, right? Who are their primary audience? What are the personas? So are they RevOps, like VPs and above in RevOps, for example, or are they startup and founders in RevOps? Yep. And then, it's really important on the platforms that you can see it, because, Substack, you're not going to necessarily see the impact. So, unless you talk to that creator and get their metrics, is what are the engagements that are happening and the quality of those engagements. So for example, you could have someone with 500,000 followers and they post every single day, and they post on the topic that you care about and to the persona that you care about. If they get 5 engagements on every post and it's the same people, the same 5 people every day, versus someone that has 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 followers, and they post every day on the same topics from the same people and all that, and they get 100 engagements and 10, 15, 20 really solid comments, topical comments. Those profiles in the kind of quick search or quick scan match the persona you also want to reach. That if all you looked at were followers, you are completely and utterly missing the
Right.
boat.
Plus,
One
the
of the
smaller
other,
creator probably has lower rates, right? Not only do you
yeah,
get a better ROI because they
oh
just
yeah,
have better engagement, they're probably charging less.
absolutely, 100%. One of the other sub metrics, I guess you could say, out of that, and something that I think once they become one of your creators, that's super important to measure, is saves. So yes, how many likes and
Yeah.
engagements? That's or how many likes in hearts and all that sort of stuff, right? That's important, but those are passive engagements, right? They're in your feed. You're like, yeah, that's good. I'll like it. Kind of keep going. A repost important. But saves signify that piece of content was so impactful
Mm-hmm.
that person wants to come back and reference it later for some reason. You don't know that reason, but if it's the 10 ways to build your sales funnel or something like that, or this is my tech stack or anything like that, and you see a save on that or a lot of saves, there's a reason that piece of content's being saved, whether that's LinkedIn, TikTok, what have you. So that number tends to kind of tip the boards, at least with me, when I'm looking at the engagement metrics, especially on, say, something like LinkedIn or TikTok, where most of them are visible except for impressions.
I mean, I'm curious if you agree or disagree, but just from a, let's say, user point of view who spends a lot of time on LinkedIn and sees sponsored posts by people, I think one thing, there's some people who just do a lot of sponsored content,
Yep.
right? They're a full-time creator, they want to monetize their audience. I take their sponsored posts a lot less serious because I'm like, I've seen you promote 5 different brands over the last couple of months. Like, this is another one of those, so I'm not even going to read it. And then the other one is like, the most believable is obviously when it's like in their voice and their tone, and they get to talk about the thing in a way that they would usually talk about it in their tone, whether that's usually in some comedic skit form or whether that's, like leverage their usual tone and don't give them a script. But then also, like, I think you can tell when someone's actually a fan or user of the product
Yes.
versus someone who just got paid to say nice things about this thing, but you can kind of feel like they don't have really a connection to the brand or the product.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't believe in and don't like, as someone in the industry, when I see creators solely monetizing their audience, it creates audience fatigue, right? So therefore their overall engagements are going to go down, to your point, and time on post, which can't really monitor, but
Yeah.
that will go down naturally. And when it is a sponsored post, two things. One thing you mentioned, the other thing you didn't, is, or alluded to, but one is when it's not natural, when it's almost verbatim what you can tell the brand gave them. Say this thing and post it, right? Because it's not in their voice. It is like 4 posts were humorous and fun and in their voice, and it maybe was all in lowercase, or this sort of thing, and then all of a sudden this thing is in capitalized and in paragraphs and whatever uses a static image, and they always create video, whatever that is.
Yep.
When you see that, you can glaringly
Yep.
understand the difference. The other thing is when they do not disclose that it's a paid relationship.
Mm-hmm.
One, it's an FTC violation. So it's federal law that governs it. You don't see it that often, and when they do enforce it, they usually make an example of a large brand or a large creator, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
a celebrity, like because if they go after me or you,
Yep.
no one's going to kind of care. They go after a huge celebrity that's selling a brand and they didn't disclose it. Obviously, people pay attention. However, in the US, it is federal law. So that's number one. Number two, it just breaks trust with your community. And I would much rather read something from someone in either they disclose that it's a paid relationship and then it's up to you to make your decision if you want to buy that thing or trial that thing. Or I actually really appreciate when someone will say, I'm not being paid by this brand.
Yeah.
I just really like this.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, well, that person I follow and I trust, I've built in trust with, actually, they do get paid by some brands, but this thing they just actually found and it improves their content creation or their professional day to day or their personal life. I like to see that, but I do not like to see, and I do not believe in, and we do not allow it to be one-on-one or one-to-one kind of brand messaging, copy and paste.
Yep.
Because that's not authentic, and actually everyone loses. The brand loses, and the creator loses.
Yeah. Now we're coming up on time here, so but I have one last question for you. I read on your LinkedIn that you established a cross-functional social support SWAT team operating 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, triaging 900 plus priority posts within an hour and resolving issues in under 2.5 hours via coordination with 75 plus SMEs across 10 plus departments. Can you, number one, just expand on what this all means and what does it look like?
Yeah. So when I came in, and I can't take credit for the launch of it. When I came in, the whole process was already being set up. I have just managed the process since it launched like 2 weeks after I got here, right? So I can't take credit for the setup or the idea behind it. However, the program, which I do now, I have managed since it launched, was to help provide social support to people who might complain on, say, LinkedIn or Twitter, whether it was someone requesting their data to be removed from our systems, or maybe they had a negative interaction with one of our sales team members, or there was a legal concern, kind of ... fill in the blank, right? And what we were seeing throughout, especially last year, things have kind of quieted down this year, but still there, is we were in 2023 before I got here, having a lot of kind of attacks on the brand. And so we wanted to improve brand perception, among other things that a brand would naturally do, right? This was one way we could do that. So we worked on training 10 to 12 teams throughout the company. So our privacy and compliance team, our legal team, our data privacy team, sales folks and whatnot. And that has expanded over time, our security team and folks like that. And trained now there's about 75 to 100 SMEs. Most of them are directors and above.
Wow.
Straight up to our deputy counsel. We built a matrix that looks at, okay, if it's this type of post and they have this many followers or it's received this many comments in this short period of time, this is where we're going to escalate it, right? It might go to a VP versus the director. It might go to our deputy counsel versus a VP, whatever. And we set SLAs that we wanted to respond to it within under an hour of identification, and we wanted to have it resolved in under 24 hours. The reason for those two is time. The initial time is just to be present and say, yep, we're looking into it. The 24 hours, sometimes it just takes time. If it happens off hours, if it takes time to investigate the issue or get the relevant people involved, that can take a minute. So we built this whole process and have a team. They're kind of my team that reports to me, or a couple other teams that monitor in real time across three shifts. It was four, but now across 3 shifts a day. And our business ops team built a automation system for us. So what it does is it's a Google sheet that has, based on some criteria, it will then, when it's not something that our team can resolve or that we've chosen to ignore for some reason, let's say it's a troll that's only going to prove hard or not prove any benefit to anyone, it will workflow it into a private Slack channel and tag the appropriate team based on what we set in that Google sheet. It'll include the link to the post, their Salesforce campaign, or their Salesforce profile if they're a customer. And then we can track all of that into a Looker dashboard that we have set up. So, 100 different cuts of metrics in there.
Wow. So this is like LinkedIn posts or tweets or like a Reddit thread where people mention ZoomInfo and say something negative or complaining or
100%. Yeah. I mean, it could be, you take to LinkedIn today and you're like, ZoomInfo, remove my information from your database. I don't want to receive any more calls.
Yeah.
Our team would listen for that, right? Pick up on it, reach out. We'd workflow it to our privacy team, and they would remove your contact information from our database.
And then reply to my post too?
Yeah, and based on the severity of the post or what have you, it'd either be public or private, or it'd say, hey, listen, we're going to reply to you privately and then do that, right? Publicly and then take it private. What's been an interesting evolution, and I have literally no idea why this is happening, was this year we saw, starting right at the beginning of the year, we saw this transition from public posts, which still happen, to DMs. And I literally have zero clue on why this has happened. But instead of a lot of public posts, and maybe it's because people saw that we are being really responsive and what was happening. And again, I don't know. It's
you say DMs to the LinkedIn page, or who would people DM?
Yep, to the company, to the ZoomInfo company page. We get DMs almost every day of people reaching out for some reason or another.
How many mentions are there per day of ZoomInfo across like LinkedIn, Twitter, Reddit?
It depends on the day, right? Like, and it, we received, so to your point, last year, we received somewheres around 650 to 750 posts that our team picked up on and either triaged or decided for one reason or another not to send to our SWAT team.
Per day?
No, across the whole entire year. Thank goodness it wasn't
650 posts. Okay, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I wish more brands had that. I mean, how many times has any one of us tried to reach out to whatever, their airline or and just try to get someone to help them out? And it's just really difficult with a lot of companies. So it's really cool that you guys did it. All right, awesome. I know we went over time here a couple minutes. Justin, thank you so much for your time. If people want to check out your stuff, I'll link your LinkedIn profile down below, as well as obviously ZoomInfo's page. I'm sure most people are aware of ZoomInfo. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. And I learned a ton on kind of how to make influencer marketing work.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. This podcast is brought to you by Project 33. Project 33 is the leading executive thought leadership agency for LinkedIn. If you're looking to activate your founder, your CEO, your executives, or any of your internal subject matter experts and create thought leadership content for them to build trust and credibility for your brand, reach out at project33.io.